first of all, I'm really happy that Rob was like talking so much about customization, because like I hope that you kind of enjoyed you were enjoying all those amazing talks, and your brain is loaded with the good ideas. You know, your mind is overflowing with the ideas for the new projects. But I guess your body gets a bit stiff, right? Like the sitting the whole day. So you could probably use some stretching. But don't worry, I'm not going to make you exercise now. It's more like how to stretch our directives, how to make them more flexible or more customizable. So for those who don't know me, my name is Pawel Kozlowski, and I'm basically doing two things, climbing, and I'm into open source. I'm messing with several open source projects, including Angular, Angular UI, Karma. But examples I would like to use today are from Angular ui-bootstrap. So as you probably know, this is just a set of native AngularJS directives using Bootstrap markup and the CSS. So when we started to work on this project, quite some time ago actually, we had some underlying principles, some kind of non-negotiable things. And there were two that, maybe one that was kind of pretty controversial at the time, which basically we said like we want to have like native AngularJS directives. And in the context of this particular project, it meant that we wanted to just take CSS from Bootstrap and a markup structure and recode all the logic in Angular way. And at the time it was pretty controversial. People were saying, okay, you are crazy, we are duplicating the efforts and so on. But there were several reasons why we wanted to do this way. So obviously there were reasons like you could remove dependencies on third-party libraries. You could actually recode the same logic using less of the JavaScript code thanks to Angular QA data binding. Obviously, we wanted to take advantage of good testability that comes with AngularJS. But there was one more item that maybe wasn't visible at the beginning of the project, which is kind of customizability. So as Rob was saying, from the very beginning, we knew that we can think as hard as we can about the API, about what a given directive can do, but inevitably there will be someone who will come and say like, okay, your project is cool, this directive is very cool, but I would do this but. So we wanted to, like from the very beginning, have some plugin points, some flex points that people could use. So the good news is that I will not be talking here about the actual Angular UI Bootstrap project, but some like those techniques that enable customization. And the good news is that those techniques are very simple. Those are things that are built into Angular, and you can use them in your own directive. This is not something reserved for widgets. This is actually something that you can use in any directive. So the most obvious thing to do when we talk about the customization and directive is to actually change the look and feel of the thing that we are delivering. Because if we look at the pagination or tab set or some other widget, the logic is pretty uniform. I mean, they always behave the same. We just want them to look differently. So we've got this company in France called Atoll that have the whole marketing strategy for the product built around this visual customization. And when we think about the directives and changing the markup or changing the look and feel, obviously we can do a lot with CSS. But like sometimes CSS is not enough and we would like to change some markup. So it seems like an obvious thing to do. But for me it was always very frustrating that with, and now Wi-Fi should be, it should be good. That if you look at the typical example of the jQuery plugin, this is actually date picker from jQuery UI, and it's very good like plugin. People were using it for years. But when you scroll over it, you will see those like patches of markup being all over the place. So if you actually want to do more customizations than just like swapping colors with CSS, you are basically out of the luck. I mean, your only option is to fork this thing and painfully go through the whole code and like change those little things. So if you compare this to the date picker in the Bootstrap project, well, where's the code actually? Here's the code. I hope you can see it all right. But when you scroll through it, you will see that there's no markup in here, like that there's just pure JavaScript logic. And the markup ends up in the separate templates. So we've got like a template for the entry point for the date picker, and you can see that there are sub-directives for picking a day, picking a month, and so on. And when you drill down to picking a month, for example, you start to have actual logic. So we can see that this is like very nicely pulled out from the JavaScript code, and so Directive can have still all the logic, can prepare the model, and just hand it over to the template to display. And in this sense, those directives that produce some markup are really no much different from the AngularJS applications, where all those good practices of not manipulating them from the JavaScript, you can still like think of your directive as mini applications. So. Come on. And as I said, like we can this thing, this template customization, we get it absolutely for free because there is this template URL thing where we can say like, here's my directive, but it takes markup from somewhere else. I think the problem, somehow, like before talking about the problems, somehow the ultimate proof, or like at least the experiment with this technique of customization through changing templates is the Angular Foundation project, which is just direct clone of Angular ui-bootstrap. So what those guys did, they just took all the JavaScript and they like replaced HTML and templates to use Foundation markup and CSS. And they really kind of, if you look at their project, if it opens up, yeah, fortunately it is, you can see that it's almost like Angular ui-bootstrap. I mean, you've got the same API in terms of like directives and the attributes, but it looks like Foundation. So this is, as I said, it's not always that simple, and we need to work hard to actually keep all the markup and visual logic out of the directive. But like if we push this idea like really far, we are getting this level of customization. So this is very powerful and very simple because this is just basically using template URL from the directives. It just like requires some discipline of really being aggressive about keeping all the markup out of JavaScript code. And I think people sometimes like shy away from using this because they are saying like, okay, here's the template URL. So this is probably some markup that is going to get downloaded from the web server, and I don't want to do it because it will make my directive slow and so on and so forth. But for me, we should never actually load those templates from a web server. We should always package an application. So in this sense, this template URL is just like a unique ID for a template. So like, yeah, don't be afraid of using it. So by swapping CSS or swapping markup, we can do things. But sometimes people just want to change the logic. So they want to build on top of existing directives or change their behavior. So how can we do this? Well, the first reaction is like when I've got my directive and someone is coming saying like, okay, I like your directive, but I would like to have this additional option that if I provide this attribute, your directive like behaves like slightly differently. And this is we say like, okay, yeah, fine, I'm going to add this attribute, and the directive is like all of a sudden more functional, more powerful. And actually, this is what happens a lot. I mean, we start off with the very simple use case, and we start to build on this simple use case as the people coming and saying, okay, I would like to add this and that. And this is unfortunately what happened a bit with the pagination directive, because we were not careful enough. So at the beginning, we had like very simple, like, four attributes, like pretty obvious things like ng model, number of items in the collection, and so on and so forth. And there were people coming and saying like, okay, I would like to use the rotate thing. Okay, yeah, you want it, you have it. And then it kind of snowballed from this. And this is not really cool, because after a while of applying this technique, you end up with something like this. And like all of a sudden, a nuclear power plant is kind of easier to manage than your directive. So this is definitely not the situation in which you want to end up. So what can we do instead of massively adding those attributes? So one of the things, or like once again, is just another attribute that exists in AngularJS for directives, is using a controller as the extension point for your logic. So as template URL is kind of extension for your markup, we can think of the controller as extension for your logic. So if you dump all your JavaScript inside the linking function, I mean, it's just there. It's just sitting there. No one can access it. No one can modify it. Instead, if you think about your controller and its API, people can actually access this controller and modify behavior of the directive from outside. So there is another very simple example of the alert directive. We've got an alert directive in the Angular ui-bootstrap, and it's a very simple one. It just basically displays an alert. I hope it's going to load. If not, so as it's loading, so the thing with the alerts is just like a very simple directive, but for some reason people wanted to have it being closable or like dismissable on the timeout. And there were many requests coming for this little extension. And someone even sent a pull request, which is a very nice pull request. You kind of, seldom get those nice pull requests. It's like a small, has the proper commit message. It has like even tests, like, brilliant. You should just merge it immediately, right? The trouble is with this proposal, though, that it adds like this yet another attribute, auto dismiss. And this attribute is saying, like, there is like 4 or 5 lines of code here. There's not much, there's no harm in it. Yet those 4 or 5 lines of code, like making so many assumptions. The first big assumption is that this alert should be closed on timeout. What if someone wants to close it on, I don't know, route change or like some other event? You would have to add another attribute, right? Like close on the route change. It also assumes that this attribute is watched. What's the point in watching it? It also assumes that we are providing this timeout in milliseconds. So, like 4 lines of code and already so many assumptions. So actually, we can have the same, exactly the same. So yeah, this is what we would end up like, applying those directives. The tool that is like, does everything, but it's bulky and not very specific. So instead, what we can do is to have a controller exposing a general close method. We don't know what this close method is, but like it's closing thing. And then we can have like as many other directives as we want that just require the alert controller provide as many, like reading as many attributes as they want and just closing the timeout. So we've got the same lines of code, like the same amount of lines, the same number of lines of code. We've got exactly the same functionality, but the flexibility of this solution is like so different. I mean, someone can come up and say like dismiss on route change or dismiss or whatever I want, and this is not like people could be adding those things without even sending a pull request, and this is ideal situation. We just don't want to get a pull request for every possible use case in this world. So yeah, like just basically think of the controller as the extension point. Like the controllers are usually documented as something that of interdirective communication, and it is for interdirective communication, but it's also kind of extension point. And since controllers are can be registered in a dependency injection container, people can actually swap it or monkey patch it, like decorate it. So you can really get far with this. There is another technique, and I was I didn't know at the time I was doing the presentation that I'm going to talk just before the coffee break. So now I'm risking that your thoughts are going to drift to the coffee break, but stay with me. So you probably know that if there are multiple directives in AngularJS that matches the same element or the same attribute, all those directives are going to be executed on the same element. And actually, we can use this to our advantage to actually compose the final API from smaller layers to have some kind of delicious functionality. So the typical example we had in the Angular ui-bootstrap is like draggable models. I just don't know why people are insisting on having draggable models, but they do. And we really did, draggable models are not part of the Angular UI on the Bootstrap itself, and we really didn't want to add this functionality because you would have to think like, okay, which library I'm going to use to have models being draggable. Like if I decide on the jQuery UI, people will be using another library, will be unhappy, and so on and so forth. So this is we said like, okay, but actually the solution to this problem is very simple, this aggregation or stackability. So let's look at the model, sorry. If we look at the model, sorry, this is not what I'm trying to open. Alt1, source, sorry. Model. If you look at the model service, there is no markup inside.
Can you raise the file size a bit?
Yeah, sure. There is no markup, but there are some. The only markup you can find here is basically when we are displaying a modal window or backdrop. We've got like very small specific directives for it. So there is the modal window directive. So people can use this to actually write draggable models. So how you do it? You write like another directive that is matching the same element or attribute. I don't know if it's like big enough, should be big enough. And you include whatever crazy libraries you want. In this case, like jQuery with jQuery UI. And you write this one line of code, and all of a sudden your model becomes draggable. I hope so, at least. So do I have it somewhere? So yeah, so this is like you can actually stack directives one on top of the other, and have like draggable models. So my advice here would be to like really not to write like huge directives, but break them apart and have like a smaller directives that can be composed into a bigger collaborating parts. So like kind of build on the simple primitives, and by combining them, you can arrive at something much bigger and much more powerful. So as much as we like directives and like to write them, sometimes they are like really not the right abstraction. I mean, they start to feel like a little bit awkward. Like you can use them in only one very specific condition, and maybe it's because it's the directive is not the right abstraction. Maybe there is something else that is needed. And I remember from when people get their hands on AngularJS and started to write the first directives, and people wanted to do a modal, they were writing like a modal directive that was like listening to some model change, and then the model was popping up. But with practice, like with time, it proved that not to be like the right abstraction, because we had to have this intermediate model value that we would listen to open the model, and so on and so forth. So what seems to be working in practice is to having a service that from which you can and manipulate them. So I mean, if you start to do it, you might have have strange looks on the Stack Overflow and some angry comments as well. It happened to me, but I think it's important to recognize where the when the given abstraction doesn't work, when there are some rules. I mean, you have to know them, but you also have to know where to actually break them. So yeah, sometimes service might be a right abstraction. So, as I said in the very beginning, those are not revolutionary things. That there's nothing fundamentally new here. It's just basically putting existing attributes to the use and actually thinking about extension points of directives when writing them. So, as I said, use template URL. Think of the controller as the potential extension point. Don't try to write everything in one directive. Think of the extension points that people could use to extend and build on top of what you created. And hopefully this way people will be writing a smaller reusable and composable directives. And the one very important thing is I mean, at the beginning, I think we did a mistake in Angular ui-bootstrap trying to anticipate many of the use cases, and we anticipated some of them well, some of them badly. So I mean, now I'm in the mode let's resist of building elaborate API, wait for the use cases to show up, and then open up APIs gradually. But this approach means that you will be changing your directives or your APIs, and you will be breaking them. And you don't want to be in this situation without test. I mean, I think I don't want to repeat all the things about the testability in AngularJS, but you really don't want to be in this situation, doing testing manually, especially cross-browser testing. I mean, and I can't say how many times the cross-browser testing saved our day because certain version on Safari just didn't work or something. So actually, we've been lucky enough to have a CI server, the same that is used in Angular. So thank you, the Angular team, for letting us using this infrastructure because it saved us a lot of trouble. This gentleman, I don't know if you know him, you might have seen him somewhere. He has a blog post with some other techniques on a kind of extending, or maybe hacking is a strong word, but so yeah, you can check this one. And this is all I've prepared. I would like to hear from you actually after the talk. To have your feedback, how you write your directives. Do you maybe see some other extension points, or if you've got anything, just please come and talk. Would be really happy to discuss those things with you. I will push the presentation and the examples to this repo, so you might want to check this out afterwards. Thank you.